All right. Hello and welcome back to the newest episode of the New Year Six podcast. Today, I'll be wrapping up my team preview videos. We're down to just the independents. We are here. This is the final couple days without college football. Time to get excited. Time to get ready to go for what lies ahead. So today I have the independents. I have the Pac-12. 5 teams total, so I'm going to just do it all at once. And then at the end, I'm going to go week by week and you'll highlight the best games, best location prediction, and then where College Gameday might be heading this fall. So with that, this is not going to be like the other videos in the sense that there's no champion to crown, so to speak. But I am going to put these teams in order of what I perceive their record to be by the end of the year. Now, obviously Notre Dame and UMass do not play the same schedule and do not play the same teams. So if somehow UMass had a better record than Notre Dame, it would not make UMass a better team than Notre Dame, right? So I'm just going to go in order of record from bottom to top. And just like those other videos, if you haven't watched them, I'm going to have a player on offense and player on defense that I think is due for a big year and give them that shout out, that recognition. So that's how things are going to run. This episode should be a little bit shorter, hopefully. Trying to get it under that hour and a half mark, but time will tell how it goes. So with that, we'll kick it over to the first team on this list. We are going to stick with your traditional independent here. There's only 3 to pick from. It's Notre Dame, UConn, UMass. Notre Dame is obviously a clear power college football scene. So that leaves this first team to either be UConn or UMass. And based on what we've seen in the past, either team is, kind of eligible to be one of the lower ranked teams in college football right now. And, this team is no different. They are historically one of the worst teams at the FBS level, struggled to adapt to moving up from FCS about a decade ago. Have never found their footing. I don't think they're going to find it this year. And that is going to be UMass. So Don Brown came in, won 3 games the first year at UMass, which transparently speaking is probably about 2 games more than what he anticipated. UMass is over under for the year on average is probably about 1.5. So coming in and winning 3 is an accomplishment. And I think Don Brown could be the coach to build this team up into something at least somewhat decent and somewhat respectable, especially as UMass is headed to the MAC next year. That might be the upgrade for them that they need. But from where we're at right now, there's just, the facilities are not in place, the personnel is not in place to make UMass a legitimate contender to do anything other than be towards the bottom of independence, towards the bottom of college football. I do have them around that 3-win mark this year, so maybe some of that momentum does carry over. They're not going to be one of the absolute worst teams, but it's a tough season for UMass year in and year out. They are the team that other teams pay to play, so that you get an easy win. Missouri's going to be one of them. They actually go to Amherst this year, but UMass is the unofficial 17th member of the SEC with the amount of teams that pay them to get beat up on. So with that, let's look at the depth chart here for UMass. O-line, I think, is going to be a concern. You do have a couple starters coming back, Josh Atwood and then Ethan Montinger, but then the rest of the line is made up of transfers from Power 4 schools that just didn't find their footing, just rotational guys that didn't make it into the starting lineup and are looking for a breath of fresh air over at UMass. So it's just very hard to evaluate them. We've seen Mal Glenn at Cincinnati a little bit. We've seen Benjamin Roy at UCLA a little bit, but it just didn't pan out from there. And they're over at UMass to restart their career and make a difference for this team and beyond. The receiving game is actually going to be pretty solid for UMass. I think it's going to be the highlight of their offense. They bring in Frank Ladson from Miami. They bring in Dominic Mazzotti from San Jose State at tight end. They retain Anthony Simpson, who is near 800-yard guy in the past. You have Sterling Galvin's up there from Jacksonville State. So it's not a top-heavy receiving core. It's not one where you think to yourself, oh, that's your number one guy. That's the big one. But it's a fairly deep room for a program like UMass. So I would expect them to be able to, generate most of their offense through the air, just because it's a well-rounded and, potentially deep receiver room compared to what they've had in the past. At quarterback, I'm probably going to butcher this name. Tyson Famachan, is your quarterback again. I think he did all right last year in limited playing time. I think he's going to evolve as a passer this year. He didn't, to my knowledge, didn't lose them many games. Didn't win them a lot either. But I think as he enters his final year of eligibility, this is someone to watch for this team to help them grow, help them develop over the course of the season. And then at running back, you bring in C.J. Hester from Western Michigan. Very limited playing time over there, looking to be the established back for UMass this year. He had, moments of impact when he was out there, so it might be a promising way to begin his time at UMass is to be the full-time guy. But, just not a lot of tape on him so far, and therefore hard to evaluate. On the defensive side of the ball, the D-line, I think, is going to be the weakest point of UMass's defense this year. They're going to struggle in the trenches. And again, this is from a returning production standpoint. So, you bring in quite a few transfers. You bring in Tim Grant Randall. He comes in from Eastern Michigan. Jalen Hudson comes in from Wake Forest. You retain Aaron Beckwith. So, all these transfers on both sides of the ball are going to lead to, needing some time to gel and to blend together. I just want to see what that looks like, over the course of this season. We'll definitely see, UMass will have their share of opportunities to, improve and to grow. But on the defensive line, I just want to see them blend together first and see who's going to be the one to stand out there. Linebacker room is going to be solid, really on the back of Gerald Johnson. He comes back. He's looking to be, a stronger impact player in his last year of eligibility. I think, could be the impact player on the defense that you really want to see, especially paired with Jalen Stewart, who's also in his last year of eligibility. Those two in particular are guys that I think can step up and, be the difference maker for UMass in the middle of the field. If the front four isn't going to take care of business, at least you have that back three that should be able to get down and make the plays that are necessary. The secondary is going to be the highlight of this UMass team. So you bring in Arsene Giles from Sacred Heart. That's a big get. And then you pair him with their safeties, Terai Powell and Tyler Rudolph. Those are some guys that have been around and have made impact plays for UMass in the past. So at least, out of those five, you have three talented, capable starters. The rest are not far off. So the secondary is going to be UMass's strength, probably over the course of the whole team. I would take UMass's secondary over any position group that they currently are fielding, and it'll be interesting to see, how offenses attack them through the air, knowing that it's going to be the best part of this UMass defense. So for our breakout players, let's go with the offense first. We'll go with Braden Rome. He comes in from Cal. He is a three-star recruit in the class of 2019. Just trying to live up to that three-star potential. Didn't work out at Cal. That's all right. But now, as a grad student, it's now or never for me at UMass. Big opportunity, big stakes, and could be that blindside tackle that gets them through the 24 season. Coaches up those younger guys in the O-line that aren't starting right now, that are going to be starting in the future. But I think Rome, can be the guy to at least be serviceable enough against, against the slate of opponents that UMass is going to have. I don't know if he's going to be good enough to take on, Mizzou by himself, but if he's playing, UConn, which I'm sure that's a head-to-head matchup, I think, he can hold down the left side of the field and give, Tyson, a little bit of time in a breathable pocket for the play to develop. So I'm looking at Rome to just, again, live up to the three-star hype, which, those don't come to UMass all that often. So, you got to grab when you can, whether they're through a portal or through high school. So this is a guy that may have a chip on the shoulder of just never really rising to the potential at Berkeley. Is now going to try his best to do so over at Amherst. Now, on the defensive side of the ball, we're going to take another transfer. We'll go with Itanosa Rubin on the defensive line. He comes to UMass by Georgia Tech, first at Clemson, so a 3-star in the class of 2019. That means he's a Dabo guy. He is a Dabo recruit that I guess just didn't pan out there, didn't pan out at Georgia Tech. The mentality I have for it, I think he got passed up a good depth chart at Georgia Tech. Like, was playing a little bit. So he has some experience, he has some relevance for sure. But I mean, if you have a Dabo Sweeney identified prospect that he put his time and effort into, you bring him to UMass, like, it's a big get. I don't care if he's a grad student, I don't care if he's kind of in a middle of the pack guy or under the radar guy. You bring someone that Dabo trusted to your program, that goes a long way with building that defensive line out. They are going to need someone to step up. So why can't it be the oldest guy out there who has, powerful experience, who has, high intensity experience, and who brings it to a UMass program that is going to beg for a leader on the defensive side of the ball, especially in the trenches. So I think Rubin is the guy who can do it. I think he can, make that happen for UMass this year. But time will tell. But I'm thinking Rubin on defense, Rome on offense for a UMass team that is still going to struggle. Not going to be a fantastic year for them holistically, but maybe not as bad as it could be when it's all said and done. So with that, I'm going to go with our number 4 team. This is, we're going to stick with the independent, and we're not going to Notre Dame. So a team that, again, struggled last year, historically struggles. Not going to struggle as much this year. I do think they're going to have a little bit of improvement, but we'll stick with UConn. So UConn is in for a tough one as always. 3-9 last year under Jim Moore in his first year. I do think they'll end up being a little bit better this year. They made some additions in the portal that I think are pretty interesting. A couple of key positions, but they're still not on that level of the, let's say, group of 5 contemporaries, peers that they end up playing with. So looking at our depth chart for UConn real quick, the O-line is going to be a problem. Not going to be great. You have Chase Lunt and Valentine Sen. Those 2 are coming back. And then in the middle, you have some rotational guys. Wes Ho comes in from Syracuse. Christopher Fortin has been a rotational guy. So you have your tackles secured, and then the middle 3 is where I have some potential issues. But, again, like, this is a game that's won in the trenches. UConn doesn't have their trenches particularly figured out at this point, but they're going to have a chance to figure it out, and it's going to be within the next handful of weeks. I mean, after week 1, they go to Maryland, I believe, and that'll be a good evaluator for both of those teams. We'll get to that next week. Receiver room will be okay. I like the addition of Skylar Bell from Wisconsin. I like the addition of TJ Sheffield from Purdue. So that's really it. Like, we have at least like a 1-2 punch in that position, which at this point is a good place to begin. But outside of that, it's I mean, you can make an argument for Brett Buckman as well. So it's a 1-2-3 punch maybe. And if that's the case, at least you have some options at receiver that maybe see some rival programs and other types of programs around this level don't necessarily have. At quarterback, you bring in Nick Evers. He comes in from Washington. He has, he's been passed up at every program he's been at. He started at Oklahoma, got passed up there. Started out with, moved to Wisconsin, got passed up there. Looking for redemption, looking for a new home over at UConn now. Fun fact: Nick Evers has attempted 1 pass in his collegiate career. I witnessed that 1 pass because it was at Red River in 2022, where he was at Oklahoma. He was their 3rd string quarterback, and they got blown out 49-0. So he was playing in garbage time. But big opportunity for him now is the presumed starter at UConn. Now, sticking with the offense, Cam Edwards is a legitimately talented running back for UConn. Had a good year for them last year, 600-yard season, 4 touchdowns. I'm sure he wants to hit the 800-yard mark or the 1,000-yard mark, to really elevate this team as a whole. So it's good that UConn can at least rely on something at the skill positions, knowing that there's some questions at quarterback. The line is all right. The receiver room is up and down at times. So that's where that is at. In terms of the defense, this is where I think UConn is going to win the majority of their games. It's just a more complete unit from top to bottom. Their D-line has some guys to watch. Price Yates and Jelani Stafford come back. And then the guys you added in the portal, Jaden Simon and Jack Barton. Simon from Tulsa, Barton from Furman. Those are some guys to watch from a production standpoint. What type of contributions do they make to this D-line over the course of this year? But you have at least a couple of starters that are immediate impact players and a couple of guys that I think are going to find their footing quickly. Linebacker room, I think, is an upgrade, from the D-line as well. The secondaries in that same boat. I look the back seven is going to be the strong suit of UConn for me. You have at linebacker. Let me just make sure I got those names right. You bring in Julian Simon. He comes by way of Tulsa. You have, I'm going to butcher this name, Tuli Faumuina Brown. That's your Sam linebacker. You bring in Aaron Keyes from Western Kentucky. So there's a lot of skilled players back there. There's a lot of impact players back there that can either play in coverage, that can play up on the line if need be. So I'm not worried about the linebacker. I'm not worried about the secondary either. You have Reggie Ackles comes in from New Mexico State. Javarius Sims comes in from Central Michigan. But then you add that to Malik Dixon Williams. So, from there, there's at least a couple of really talented players back there, specifically Malik Dixon Williams. I think he's one of the underrated safeties in the country at this point, and could step up in a big way for UConn this year. Now, if we look at the offensive side of the ball, our breakout player will be Nick Evers. So comes in to UConn from Wisconsin, 4-star recruit in the class of 2022. In that last clip I had it at about UMass, where 3 stars don't go to UMass that often. Well, imagine 4 stars. They don't go to UMass or to UConn very often. So this is a big get. This is one that could be a big change for UConn if they could get a guy who lives up to his potential, lives up to that expectation. When was the last time UConn had a 4-star quarterback? I can't think of one. So if Evers can be that guy for UConn, and he is only a sophomore, this could be the changing of the tide for this team. This could get them to 500 in a bowl game. This could get them above 500. This could potentially put them in a very good spot for the foreseeable future. But it's going to take a big year from Evers this year to make sure that ends up remaining the case for UConn. And then on the defensive side of the ball, go with Jaden Simon, at the nose tackle there. So he comes in to Tulsa as a grad student. Had a 5-tackle performance against Arkansas Pine Bluff last year. So again, I know that's an FCS school, I get it. But if you can do 5 against them, you can do 5 against the FCS school that you're going to play this year, because everybody gets 1. But again, I think the D-line is needing someone to step up. The game is won in the trenches, and if you got a big guy in the center that knows his role and understands his responsibilities and understands what gap he's supposed to hit, Simon can be a very impactful player for UConn over the course of this season. So I'm going to take Simon on defense. I'll take Evers on offense for a UConn team that is still going to struggle, but I don't think it's going to be as bad as it has been in the past. So that does take us to our next team here. So I'm going to head to the remnants of the Pac-12. And really only 2 teams, one that started off strong and fell off, one that was consistently above average, but probably failed to live up to their preseason expectations. In terms of this upcoming season, I'll go with the one that started off huge, started off ranked like 5-0 or whatever, and then just fell off pretty drastically. So with that, my next team will be Washington State. So yeah, Washington State, in the remnants of the old Pac-12, there's only 2 teams remaining. They're basically playing an all Mountain West schedule. They play each other 6 games apiece, 6 Mountain West games each other. I think a rivalry game, with Washington State, Oregon State, the other 4, they found something out. So, Jake Dicker is back for year 3. Started that team off strong, but they just did not have the legs to make it work. Interesting offense, interesting team that they're building out there. I'm interested about how the offense is going to work this year because there is some improving pieces of this team. Defense should be a little bit better, but let's go to their depth chart and see what we're working with here. So if we look at the offensive side of the ball first, the O-line should be good. You have Christian Hilborn comes back, Fa'alili Fa'amo on the offensive line are your returning starters. You have Brock Dew there, who's played significant snaps. Issa Cole on the left tackle has played, his starting experience. So from there, the line is not going to be a weakness for this team. And, I think that's a good place to begin, knowing that there's a lot of change around this team right now. There's a lot of uncertainty about the future. If you can lock down the offensive line, the rest can go into place over time. Receiver room is very top heavy with Kyle Williams coming back. But outside of that, I think maybe the addition of Chris Hudson from Oregon could be a potential value add. But outside of that, I have a hard time seeing who your impact players are at this point. And again, this comes from a returning production standpoint. I'm just looking at the pure numbers that they bring back, and I have a hard time seeing who your guys are outside of those 2 in particular. Same with quarterback. Cam Ward is out. John Mateer is in. Started very sparingly, or played very sparingly over the course of his collegiate journey. How will he adapt to being the full-time guy, especially in an air raid offense that is specifically designed around having a quality quarterback? If he can be the guy for, Washington State, maybe they are back to 8, 9, 10 wins. If he can't, maybe they go down to 4-3-2 wins. There's a lot of pressure on his shoulders right now, and a lot of opportunity for him as well. And then running back is kind of more of the same. You bring back Javinsky Schallenbacher. Not a lot of tape on him, not a lot of opportunities for him over the course of last year. Should be the feature back this year, though. What does that opportunity look like for him? And how does he make the most of it, knowing that we don't have a lot of understanding of what type of runner he is? So look at the defensive side of the ball. The D-line, the defense as a whole is going to be better than the offense. There's good returning production on the D-line. Cyrus Webster comes in from Utah Tech. That is a big pickup. You add him to David Gusta, Nusi Milani. There's some impact players on that D-line. This should be more than capable of getting through the Mountain West lines that they're going to be playing this year. Pressuring those quarterbacks. I have no issue on the D-line there. Same with the linebacker room. You have a 1-2 punch of Cyrus Webster and Kyle Thornton. Not worried about that in real capacity. Both of them have made their fair share of impact. Excuse me, not Cyrus Webster. Kyle Thornton and Tariq Uqda. That's a 1-2 punch that I think is going to be more than capable of handling themselves, in that linebacker position. DB room is where I think things fall off because outside of Kapana Gushikin, you do not have a lot of returning production. Maybe Stephen Hall at corner. But it's a lot of rotational guys or younger guys that have not stepped up to the plate yet. They're going to have to learn how to step up quickly. So on the offensive side of the ball, I will go with Javinsky Schallenbacher as your breakout player. So did pick up a 20-yard run against Northern Colorado. And I know it's an FCS school, but you got to earn your stripes somewhere. Receiving touchdown against Cal, the old Pac-12. So is able to contribute to the receiving game as well as the running game, especially in an air raid where, I imagine they're going to throw it 40 plus times. So if a couple of those go to the running back and they don't see it coming, that can be big for Washington State, right? So I'll take Schallenbacher to be the young leader of this running back room and someone that can step up to the plate and be the guy that Washington State needs in order to get out of their current situation, get themselves in a good spot, generally long term. Now on the defensive side of the ball, Adrian Wilson. So 3-star recruitment class of 2023, so stuck around after the breakdown of Washington State from the Pac-12 to what they're in now, still the Pac-12, but just not the old one. Had a 2-tackle performance in his redshirt year against Northern Colorado. So again, earning your stripes early in your career, 2-tackle performance against an FCS school gets you out on the scoreboard, gets you on the stat sheet, everything along those lines. So I expect more out of Wilson this year as he assumes a full-time starter role as one of their safeties. And from there, what this, develops this defense as a whole, realistically could be the face of Washington State's defense over the next handful of years. But a big year this year is going to help cement himself on this team and, be the impact player that they need out of their secondary. So right now, I think opposing offenses are going to look at them and think I can beat them no problem. A performance like Wilson, saying no, you can't, is going to go a long way for Washington State this year. So that does take us to my other Pac-12 team. This is the one that has a lot more change going through it altogether. New head coach, a lot of new everything around the program whatsoever, but should still be a favorable year with the way that the schedule broke out. You're going from all Power 5 schedule basically to now essentially an all Group of 5 schedule. Should be all right when it's all said and done. It should be one of the better teams in that Group of 5 level of play. So with that, I'm going to go with Oregon State. So Trent Bray, new head coach. Jonathan Smith is over at Michigan State. So Trent Bray is now up. Fortunately, a guy who knows the program, defensive coordinator for Oregon State, last year, knows this team, knows these guys, and ready to make an impact. I think Oregon State had a solid year last year, but I think it was below their expectations. They had a 10-win season the year prior. I know they wanted to compete for the Pac-12 championship, just didn't come together. I think where we're at this year is probably somewhere in the middle, and they should be better than last year's team, but from a pure record perspective, they should be increased. I think it's just due to the fact that they're not playing Utah and USC, and they're still playing Oregon. They're not playing Washington. All those the upper level teams, the former Pac-12, Oregon State is now avoiding them, and as a result of that, I think their record will increase. So, looking at Oregon State's depth chart, offense is going to be the highlight of this team. You bring back a lot of production on the offensive line. You add Ben Wells from Colorado at center, but you add him to a line that has Joshua Gray and Grant Stark coming back, and then everyone else kind of a rotation guy. But you've got 3 starter level offensive linemen that are coming together for this team this year. I think it's a big opportunity for really everyone. Now, the receiver room does not have a lot of returning production. You have Jeremiah Noga, and that's basically it. You bring in Darius Clemens from Michigan, but the rest of these guys have played very few snaps over the course of their collegiate career. How will they adjust to being the number one guy in their role, as they step up into this season? At quarterback, you're now starting with Ben Goldbrinson, who didn't start last year, played a little bit here and there, but I think is ready to take that starting spot, ready to step up for Oregon State this year. I don't have any real concerns based on the level of play we've seen so far from him. And then at running back, you bring in Jan Griffin from Ole Miss, just got passed up on that depth chart. But I'm not worried about him either. I think he showed us a lot of promise at Ole Miss, and just needs the snaps and the opportunity that Oregon State will provide. Now, on the defensive side of the ball, even though their head coach, even though Trent Bray was the defensive coordinator last year, I have some concerns about this defense from a pure returning production standpoint. The D-line basically has no one coming back. Basically all their starters are gone. Someone's going to need to step up big time because it's not where we needed to be as of right now. Kind of same with the linebacker room. You do have Oluwase Omotosho. There we go, I got it. At linebacker, who's probably the best defensive player on this team this year when it's all said and done. So you have at least like a strong beginning to what this team is going to look like, but the rest of the linebacker room, generally speaking, is a little on the inexperienced side. The DB room is going to be your best room in the on the defense, but it still begs the same question. You bring in Kobe Singleton, he comes in from Liberty. I think that's a strong addition at cornerback. Your other cornerback's Jaden Robinson, so you have at least a couple that can lock it down. Maybe Skylar Thomas at safety as well, but the best room on the defense, but still some questions, still some youth and experience that we haven't seen a whole lot of on this team in previous years. So on the offensive side of the ball, your breakout player, let's go with David Wells. So, as a true freshman, did play last year, didn't use his red shirt. 3-star recruit in the class of 2023. His only stat sheet item was a catch against Stanford. I'm guessing he was a special teams guy, and from there, just kind of taking it all in. But now he's going to be more of a contributor to this team on the offensive side of the ball. He's got to have more than one catch. All right, over under more than one catch. I'm taking the over. All right. So I think that should be a safe bet. I think David Wells, as a result of that, that opportunity he's been given, just evolves as a player. Youngest receiver out there, but is going to learn from the older guys around him, and as a result, ends up as a productive receiver this year, and stabilizes this receiver room for the next couple of years. So I think Wells takes this year as the year to position himself in this team long term. On the defensive side of the ball, I'll go with the line. I'll go with Jacob Schuster. So again, someone on this line can have to step. This is a 4-star recruit in the class of 2021. 4 stars are a tough get for Oregon State. I think he's not a transfer this year, but I think he came by I want to say Minnesota. That's where he got recruited out of, but via the portal. So Schuster is he's been around the program. This is at least year 2, and I'm sure he wants to play. I'm sure he wants to be that impact player on the line, because someone on the line needs to make a difference for this team. He's going to have the opportunity. He's going to have the chance, and I think Schuster's going to make the most of it. If you've got a big guy in the middle that can put hands and get the right gap, everything along those lines, then Schuster's going to he's going to be all right. He's going to be good for this team this year. He lives up to that 4-star potential. I don't know how opposing offenses are going to run up the middle. So I think Schuster is going to be your guy on defense. Combine that with Wells on offense for an Oregon State team that is looking to figure out what their next steps as a program end up looking like with the with the way that the conference realignment kind of shook out. So with that, we'll go to our last team. So that'll be Notre Dame. So year 3 for Marcus Freeman, had a 10-win season last year. I expect more. I think that the way that the schedule ended up happening, the way that this team is developed, if you look at who they brought into the portal, Notre Dame is gearing up for a good year. I know we say that every year. I get it. I know we say it all the time. I'm ready to see Notre Dame take that step, be earn a playoff spot and potentially more. So looking at their um, depth chart here. So if we look at the offensive line, you have Billy Scruff and Pat Coogan at the guards coming back. It's going to be the line will be all right. So Billy Scruff, Pat Coogan, and then really outside of that, a lot of rotational guys. Tosh Baker is a rotational guy that is going to need to step up eventually. So you got two starters and a lot of guys that are leaning into becoming starters soon. So all line will be good enough. The receiver room is going to be legit. You have Chris Mitchell coming in from FIU. This might be one of the most important transfer pulls in all of college football this year. Chris Mitchell is a dynamic wide receiver and one that Notre Dame needs to learn how to use quickly. But you add him to Jaden Greathouse, who had a phenomenal freshman campaign. Pair that with Jaden Thomas and Mitchell Evans. So I'm not worried about the receiver in any capacity. And it helps when you're paired with a great quarterback like Riley Leonard. So he comes into to Notre Dame from Duke. Took Notre Dame to the wire last year at Duke. Went down with an injury, but Riley Leonard, he's firing on all cylinders. Is going to be what Notre Dame needs at the quarterback position. So they're set at skill position. The only concern I have is Jeremiah Love at running back. Just hasn't played a whole lot in his career at this point. Did play as a true freshman, so didn't use his redshirt year, but going to need to have a big effort this year to be the running back. You go from Audric Estimate to Jeremiah Love. Like, is that going to be a drop off? Time's going to tell, right? But Love is at Notre Dame for a reason, and we'll see if he can live up to that expectation this year. On the defensive side of the ball, looking at the trenches, this is where Notre Dame succeeds. The D line is phenomenal. You have Howard Cross. You bring in R.J. Oben from Duke. You have Riley Mills is back there. Jordan Botello, and I guess he's kind of like that edge rusher for them. So I am not worried about this defensive line. You bring in R.J. Oben, who is a great addition, but you add him to a line that's already very experienced in their own right. They're all grad students. This defense is stacked. The majority of this defense is gone at the end of this year. So a very senior, experienced defense that is going to help take Notre Dame to that next level. Now, if we look at the linebacker room, the linebacker room is led by Jack Kaiser. He's someone you need to keep your eye on at all times. He might be one of, if not the best players on this defense as a whole, but he kind of carries the room on his own. So it's a very top-heavy room, and those younger guys are going to have to rise to the occasion around him. He's going to be surrounded by Drake Bowen and Jalen Snead, who are both sophomores. And I'm sure as a grad student, Kaiser wants to win more than anything, and those young guys are going to have to help contribute to that winning. You look at the DB room, Jordan Clark comes in at nickelback from Arizona State. That's a huge pickup. You add him to Xavier Watts back there, Benjamin Morrison back there. So the DB room will be good enough. It's not going to be the highlight of this team. I think it's going to be the D-line, but the secondary is, serviceable enough to help Notre Dame, get things done over the course of this year. So our breakout player on offense is going to be Jeremiah Love. So this is your, running back. Look at his numbers from last year. Had a good game against Tennessee State, and I know that's an FCS opponent. I know that's a, it's a beat up game. I think they won like 55-3, but you got to get your touches in at some point. So 46 yards and a touchdown, and then contributed in the bowl game with a 13-yard touchdown catch against Oregon State. So, can be that feature back and score when needed. Can be that receiving back and add to the the threats out there for Riley Leonard. I think he's just due for a breakout game over the course, or breakout season over the course of how everything is slated to go right now. So I think Love, can be that next great Notre Dame running back. It's just going to take a season to establish himself in that role. Now on the defensive side of the ball, I'll go with Drake Bowen. So again, as a true sophomore, he's a true sophomore this year, so played as a true freshman, didn't burn the red shirt, had a forced fumble, recovered the fumble against NC State. That was a sloppy, ugly game in rain that Bowen clearly made the most of. 4-tackle performance against Stanford. So again, these little moments add up. My mentality is if you got four tackles against Stanford, you can do it against Florida State. You can do it against USC. You can do it against Navy. You can do it against Army. You can do it against Purdue, right? So from there, I look at the ability to replicate success, and Drake Bowen's going to have those opportunities this year for Notre Dame. So I think that the sample size he's shown us as a true freshman was good enough to put faith in him for this upcoming season to be the guy right behind Jack Kaiser to elevate this linebacker room and make Notre Dame a threat to go deep into the postseason. So with that, there's no independent champions. There's not even technically a Pac-12 champion. It's just whoever wins that head-to-head in the regular season. So got a little bit of content today, not wrap up too early. What I want to do is go week by week and take a look at where every game, where every location of College Game Day is slated to head. I'll list my top 5 games of the week on the slide, but just a couple of ground rules as to how I decided these. Mainly the location is no location gets used twice in the same season. So we already know they're going to College Station week 1, which means they will not be going to College Station when Texas A&M plays Texas. The other is that no team will be featured in back-to-back weeks. So Notre Dame goes to College Station in week 1. That means in week 2, which I think they play like Purdue the next week, that game will be off the location selection. There's only a handful of times where Game Day is not going to go to the top game of the week based on that criteria, but it adds a little bit of spruce to the idea. You don't like going to the same location twice in a 3-week span. You don't like seeing the same teams week after week, right? So you got to mix it up a little bit. So with that, we'll head over to week 0. We know where this is going to be. We already know this is going to be in Dublin, Ireland. Really, the only clear contention team or game for this week. Georgia Tech plays Florida State, and then really outside of that, SMU plays at Nevada, and then Delaware State plays at Hawaii. Montana State plays at New Mexico. It's it's clear an ACC conference game between a new look FSU team and an upstart Georgia Tech team. It's going to help set the pace for the entire season, but it was really only that was the clear choice for week 0. SMU at Nevada could be interesting. It's SMU's first game as a Power 4 team. See what Nevada looks like, and the rest are FCS at FBS. Don't get me wrong, I am going to watch as many of these as humanly possible. I don't know if I can get the Hawaii game without paying, so maybe not them, but the rest of these, I'll gear up in my living room here and see what we got going on. The 2 games at the top there, Georgia Tech at versus FSU and SMU at Nevada, are going to get in-depth preview games later this week, so be on the lookout for those. Now we'll head into week 1, where we know what it is. We know it's going to be Notre Dame at Texas A&M. I think that's the best game to pick. There's a lot more to pick from, so it's not as clear cut. But Notre Dame at Texas A&M to me was the best choice for week 1. But outside of that, Penn State at West Virginia. This is, I believe, where the big noon kickoff is going to go. It was a great game last year at Penn State. Now you flip the environment and take them to West Virginia. Going to be a lot of fun. Going to be a great environment and a rivalry game that was close last year should be close this year. We got Miami at Florida. Obviously, a little bias here, but Miami at Florida is one of the most important non-conference matchups of the season. It's huge for recruiting. It's huge for both of these teams' momentums. think of the toxicity of the losing fan base after this game. It's going to be awful. Go to Twitter, go to your team's fan base, message board, and just see, oh my God, Chris Paul the worst. Oh my God, Napier's the worst, right? It's going to be bad. So there's a lot of stakes in this game. There's a lot of ugliness in this game, and I'm looking forward to it. You got LSU versus USC. That's in Vegas Sunday night. Again, it's a new look team where both of them lose a Heisman caliber quarterback. Going to be breaking in new guys. It's Lincoln Riley trying to avoid this game forever, couldn't get out of it, and now we're going to see what that looks like out in Vegas. What is Brian Kelly building at LSU? We're going to find out. And then Georgia comes into the noon slot on Saturday. That's a huge matchup down in Atlanta, the neutral site. But Georgia goes to Clemson. Big expectations for Georgia this year. How does Clemson bounce back this year? A lot will be learned about both of these teams. How close is it going to be? Is there an upset? Is it a blowout? Time will tell. But it's going to be a good barometer for where both these teams are at heading into the rest of the season. So now we're going to head down to week 2. I'm just going to start with the top because I feel this is the most obvious one. Texas at Michigan, 2 playoff teams last year. Michigan, the defending national champion. They want to head to game day there if possible. Texas has a lot of hype around the program right now. A lot of eyes and ears on it right now, thinking they can go the distance. But where we're at right now, we'll see what it looks like. Can Michigan defend home turf? Can Texas go into a hostile environment and win a tough game? Time will tell. But we'll go through the remaining 5. Cal at Auburn. This was Auburn at Cal last year. So, get to return the favor. I kind of enjoy those West Coast SEC matchups, right? Where it's, Florida, Utah, Cal, Auburn, Mississippi State plays Arizona State this year. So, little matchups like that are, not common with this, with the way our season shakes out. So it's nice to see a nice home and home like that. So Cal returns the favor. They go to Auburn this year. We'll see what Auburn looks like at this point in the season as well. I think Auburn's a sneaky team. This is their first real test. Colorado at Nebraska. Colorado is the media darling with Deion Sanders out there. Nebraska has a lot of hope around the program with Dylan Raiola. So, this is going to determine where both of these seasons head. Does Colorado crater and burn from this game onwards? Does Nebraska live up to their hype, or do they continue to live in the past and not meet expectations? Time will tell. This is an early season measuring stick for both of these teams. How about South Carolina at Kentucky? So kind of a battle of the teams that are looking to prove themselves in the SEC. South Carolina struggled last year. How do they bounce back in 2024? Kentucky, fell below their own expectations last year. How do they respond, to that type of adversity? So I think in the early season matchup, this is the SEC on ABC matchup of the week. And from there, it's going to put one team presumably at 2-0 and with a lot of momentum, and the other one and one and struggling to figure out who they really are as a team. And then you have Tennessee versus NC State. This is a neutral site game. I think it's in Nashville, Charlotte, somewhere in that general neck of the woods. But Tennessee has a lot of hype around this program this year and beyond. NC State is they're a scrappy ACC program, and one that I think is looking for a signature win this year, and this could be that signature win. We'll see what it ends up looking like. Let's see what both these teams end up playing like. But from where I am sitting, it could be one of the better games that we see this this early regular season. So now we're going to head to week 3. So I'll start from the bottom up. Oregon at Oregon State, rivalry game, and a fun one, even if it's not a conference game anymore. It's not played at the end of the year. So an early season heavy rivalry is going to be fun to watch. Georgia at Kentucky. So again, how how does Kentucky respond to South Carolina? And now they get a harder opponent at home. How did they respond to Georgia? It's a battle of Georgia versus Georgia's former quarterback, Brock Vandergriff. How does that all come together for Kentucky this year? You have UCF going to TCU, both of them making their first appearance on the list. Big 12 matchup that is enticing, right? It's going to be, I believe it's a night game at TCU. Is TCU bouncing back from their sub 500 year? Is UCF, building momentum and becoming a threat in the Big 12 and beyond? This is the type of game that helps us understand where both these teams are at. Ahead of that is Arizona at Kansas State. This is a Friday night game, but this is a battle of two contenders in the Big 12, right? So I'm not high on Arizona. I'm not as high on Arizona as other teams are. I'm very high on Kansas State, and this may be their, the proving opportunity that Kansas State needs early in the season to establish themselves as a contender. But my number one game of the week, where I have game day going to, it's a game I'm actually going to myself. Texas A&M goes to Florida. So I got game day going to Gainesville. They love going to Gainesville when they can. They have not gone in 5 years. I'm sure they love to break that, absence. And it's going to be a matter of, both these teams come together early in the season. Again, a big matchup at home for Florida, knowing how hard their schedule is. I imagine they're going to get to Gainesville eventually with how many marquee opponents are heading that way. I think they just get there early. It's a kind of an odd week in week 3, and Florida makes the most of it with a good opponent at home. Therefore, they get game day in Gainesville. So with that, we'll go to week 4. NC State goes to Clemson this week. Again, this is an interesting matchup. We have not seen Clemson at home on this list. We've seen them at a neutral site. We have not seen NC State on the road. We've seen them at a neutral site, and this is a conference matchup. Where is Clemson at this point in the season? Where is NC State at this point in the season? How does this come together for everyone when there's a lot of stakes at hand? I'm looking forward to it. I think it's one of the best games of the week when all things are considered. We got TCU going to SMU. This is a Power 4 now rivalry game. These teams do not like each other. They are not far apart from each other in terms of distance. It's Dallas and Fort Worth. It's going to be a toxic matchup with two teams that really want to have the last laugh over the other one. So I'm really looking forward to watching that one and seeing where both these teams are in the season. I don't think we've seen SMU on this list so far since it's their first spotlight opportunity for the upcoming year. Utah goes to Oklahoma State. So I look at that as, again, a big opportunity for contenders in the Big 12. Utah's a threat to win it all. Oklahoma State was just in their conference championship game. I'm sure they want to go back. So from there, this is the type of game that sets the pace and sets the tone for your conference championship game and your playoff chances. You win this one, you can ride that momentum through the end of the season. You got USC going to Michigan. This is a conference matchup now. I believe this is the most played Rose Bowl game of all time, and now it's a back and forth conference game. So it's going to be in Ann Arbor. Where's USC at this point in the season? Where's Michigan at this point in the season? Do either of them have a loss and are bouncing back, or both of them undefeated? Where are we at as a program right now? And from there, is USC developing and getting better? Is Michigan rebounding from the offseason chaos? We're going to see one of these team fan bases is going to be disappointed. And then the big one I have is Tennessee at Oklahoma. So, game day's going to Norman. Again, this is now an SEC matchup. This is an upstart Tennessee team versus a brand new Oklahoma to the SEC. What does this look like for both of them? Is USC or is Tennessee beating everyone? Are they just going to task with everyone at their lineup? Is Oklahoma going to defend home turf against their first? I think this is their first SEC matchup. So, from there, what are these teams looking like? How are they going to get it done? And does Tennessee walk away with this with a tough road victory? Does Oklahoma defend their home turf and presumably 4-0? So time will tell, but this is another good week of the season so far. So from there, we're going to go to week 5. I'm just going to start with where game day is headed because I think this is the most obvious location of all, especially knowing that this is an ESPN produced show. They're going to Tuscaloosa. Georgia and Alabama, the two heavyweights in the SEC, the two favored teams in all of college football from ESPN's point of view. They love these two, so it's going to Tuscaloosa. Absolutely not a shadow of a doubt. It's going to Tuscaloosa. And this will be one of the best early season matchups. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not underselling it because, of course, ESPN. But at this point, it's going to be a top 5 matchup, right? It's going to be one with a lot of stakes early on as well as long term. There's head-to-head implications when it comes to the playoffs or conference championship game. This is a game that's going to have ripple effects throughout the landscape of college football. But outside of that, you have Oklahoma State going to Kansas State. Again, another top of the Big 12 matchup. Got to give them their love. Got to give them their respect. So, those two are going to fight it out for dominance. You have, and these are two old school Big 12 teams. So I'm sure both of them want to defend turf and get to the championship game. Florida State goes to SMU. I think this is an underrated and overlooked one. We'll see where Florida State is at this point in the season. SMU, at this point should be, developed and in a good place within the ACC. And this is going to be their first real home test against a top-level conference opponent. How are they going to handle the adversity? Time will tell. Louisville goes out to Notre Dame that week. This is a game Notre Dame lost in Louisville last year. I know those returning players are hungry for a win and want to make sure that they can get it against Louisville this year. They want revenge. They want everything to go their way. So this is a big game with repercussions for both teams, especially if Notre Dame loses. They don't have the conference championship game. And then you have Oklahoma at Auburn. Again, I think Auburn is a sneaky team. I think it's one that could get a win or two that maybe people aren't expecting. Maybe that's against Oklahoma, right? Where's Oklahoma at this point in the season? Were they able to defend home turf against Tennessee? Are they downward spiraling? I don't have the answers because, again, we're not in week 5. So, from there, do they go to Auburn in a tough environment and win on the road in the SEC, which is a lot easier said than done? So, yeah, but those are my top 5 matchups for week 5. We're going to head to week 6. So this is one of the only weeks where you'll see it's a little different of a location compared to what the top games are. So let's just start from the bottom. Iowa at Ohio State. We have not seen Iowa on this list so far. I don't think we may have seen Ohio State so far either, right? I don't think so. I got the notes in front of me. I don't think we've seen either of these teams on this sheet so far, which means Ohio State has probably been cruising for the first 5 weeks, as has Iowa. So their first real test in the, I guess we would call this middle of the season. Who's going to be the one to step up to the plate? Who's going to be the one to make the most of everything? And, does Iowa present a challenge on that defense, for Ohio State's offense? Is the Ohio State, environment and knowing how bad Iowa's offense is, how much of that is going to play an impact in this game as well? So, there's a lot going on in this game. I think it's a little bit underrated and under the radar. You have Washington at Michigan, a rematch of the national championship last year. Always going to be an option, always going to be an opportunity for both of these teams. So, I know we've already been to Michigan for game day, but this is always going to be an option for return if they so choose to. You got Clemson going to Florida State, a battle of the top teams in the ACC. No question about it. This is going to be on the radar. You got Missouri at Texas A&M. So from that perspective, Missouri has a lot of hype around them and a lot of what's it called? A lot of hype, a lot of expectation around them this year. Should be one of the top teams in the SEC. Whereas Texas A&M at this point, they could have, they could be undefeated. They could have 2 losses at least. So we're going to find out where these teams are for the rest of the season. And then the big one for me is Auburn, Georgia. This is a hated rivalry game. These two teams do not like each other. They want to see the other school burn. It is a matchup for the ages of all times, and one that we should definitely look forward to. In terms of why we're not picking Georgia, so we just saw Georgia in last week's episode at Alabama. I won't do them in back-to-back weeks, so we'll cross that one off. We've already been to College Station, cross that one off. So then we get to Clemson at Florida State for our game day location, which I'm sure the game day crowd will be pleasant and respectful and very agreeable about the decision of the playoff committee that ESPN pushes so greatly. I don't think there's going to be no bad blood at all from the fans in Tallahassee. But from there, we'll go to week 7, and let's just call this Armageddon. This might be the best week in college football history, at least in the regular season perspective. We're just going to start at the top. Ohio State at Oregon is a potential 1-2 matchup. There's a lot of hype around both these teams. They should both be undefeated, and I'm going to be at that one. I'm going to be in row like 86 because those tickets were out the crazy price. But Ohio State at Oregon is going to be a phenomenal matchup to lead this weekend. But outside of that, Penn State goes to USC. They travel across the country for a conference game. Make that make sense. But that's a phenomenal matchup. We're going to figure out where both these teams are at. Penn State has been off this list for a while, so assuming outside of week 1, they've pretty much cruised. How do they handle a tough road game against a quality opponent? Ole Miss goes to LSU that weekend. As a reminder, Ole Miss beat LSU last year. A very tough game, and LSU has that on their mind as well. LSU has revenge and wants to beat a cocky Ole Miss team at Death Valley, and I don't know what time that game will be. I hope it's at night, to really get everything going. But from where we're sitting and from where we're seeing, this is going to be a fantastic matchup. As is Florida at Tennessee. This is all like, if you're not a Florida or Tennessee fan, you may not understand how much hatred there is between these fan bases. I have nothing nice to say about the Tennessee fans. They have nothing nice to say about the Florida fans. But it's a game that Tennessee has struggled in over the last 20 or so years. I think they've won 3 times out of the last 20. I can actually count them. It was 2022, 2017, and 2004 was the last 3 times they've won. Outside of that, that's what? Yeah, that was 20 years ago. Yeah, so 3 and 17. So from that angle, Tennessee wants to win back. Florida, this is their first tough road opponent. How do they handle the adversity? Where are they at in this season? Are they undefeated? Are they 2-4? We're going to find out where this team is really at right now as they gear up for the hardest stretch of their schedule. And then, of course, you got Red River. I got Red River a couple of years ago. That is always going to be an option for game day and a top quality game. There's a lot of hype around Texas this year. We'll see what Oklahoma ends up looking like, but that should be a fun game for everyone involved, fun for the Texas State Fair. And it's not going to be at 11 a.m. anymore. It's going to be at 2:30 now. So you might get to see Red River at night if it goes long enough. I don't know how when the sun sets out there, but we'll see. This is going to be a fun one for sure. So with that, we'll go to week 8. So there's a couple of quality matchups at this point in the season. There's also a couple of sleeper ones. This is where you'll start to see some of the less visited locations come into the mix. So USC goes to Maryland that week. Again, I have Maryland as a sleeper team in the Big Ten. I have them as a potential spoiler to a lot of teams. this could be one of those games, right? Um, and it'll be their first real tough challenge at home. You got Miami going to Louisville back. So where does Louisville end up at this point? Where's Miami at this point? There's quite quite a few quality opponents on both their schedules at this point. Who have they beaten and who have they lost to? And then what happens when they go head to head? Time will tell, but I think it's going to be fun. Auburn goes to Missouri, and again, Missouri is one of your conference contenders, someone that you want to take a peek at and see where they're really at. Auburn enjoys playing the spoiler. I don't care if it's on the road. I don't care if it's at home. Auburn is a tricky team that you're always going to have to watch out for, and this is a team that this is a matchup that both teams are very capable of winning. You got Georgia going to Texas. This is a matchup of two teams with a ton of hype around them. Depending on how the schedule shakes out, they should be top 5, top 10 teams at minimum. But from there, this is where we decide what our playoffs end up looking like, what our SEC championship game ends up looking like. There's a lot of good gameplay to be had between these two teams. There's a lot of talent on both these teams. And how does Georgia handle going on the road in a tough environment like this? But the top game of the week is Alabama at Tennessee. Game day head to Knoxville. This is another hatred-filled rivalry, especially on the Tennessee side of things. When they beat them in 22 and they tore down the whole stadium, expect more of that, right? More of that energy. So game day is not going to miss a chance to get in a piece of that. They are not going to miss the opportunity to, see that come together. So Alabama and Tennessee in a classic SEC matchup is going to be the ideal spot for game day this week. So now we're going to head over to week 9. So from here, this is where I had to get an old picture for this one. So this is your road less traveled location, so to speak. So still a lot of quality matchups on this day. LSU goes to Texas A&M on this day. A&M's bringing out the black jerseys, from my understanding. LSU, we'll see where they're at this point. We'll see where Texas A&M is at this point. And from there, try to understand what the rest of the season is going to look like as they head down the final stretch. Is A&M on cruise control and everything's clicking and the defense is together and they have a run game? Is LSU breaking in their new quarterback? Is the defense fixed? We're going to know a lot about these teams at this point. It's going to be an exciting matchup. We got Nebraska at Ohio State. So there's something going around where it's like Nebraska could be undefeated heading into Ohio State. And I believe that. I think that's a very real possibility. And it's going to take Nebraska on the road to a tough environment to see what they're made of, right? If that's the case, it'll be a top 25 matchup. We haven't gone to Ohio State yet, so it'll be an option. But, what can true freshman Dylan Raiola do in the shoe? That's going to be a tough one for him. But at this point, maybe he's composed, maybe he's put together, and the team's rallying around him. And, maybe some magic happens in Columbus. We got Oklahoma going to Ole Miss. Another quality SEC matchup. Oklahoma, again, where are they at this point in the season? How are they adjusting to SEC play? Where's Ole Miss? Are they at the top of the conference and being the contenders we expect them to be? Or are they, somewhere else in the mix? We're going to find out. We're going to find out what these teams are made of early. And at this point, we're halfway through the season. This has conference and playoff implications for both of these teams. You lose this game, you might be eliminated from the playoffs hypothetically. So a lot of stakes on this game for both of these teams. We are Kansas to Kansas State. This is my sleeper pick. We have not seen Kansas on the schedule yet. We've seen Kansas State sparingly, but from where I'm sitting, this is an important matchup for both of these teams. This is a big matchup for both of these teams, and it's a rivalry game. You obviously got to take that into consideration. But the two of these teams are going to come at it with a lot of intensity, a lot of aggression, and going to be one of the best games of the weekend. And you got Missouri at Alabama as well. Same deal with Oklahoma Ole Miss. It has a lot of SEC implications, playoff implications between two top-heavy teams, in America's best conference. So we've already been to Tuscaloosa. So for game day, I'm going to go with Manhattan, Kansas. I believe the last time they had been to Manhattan was 1998. Hence the super old picture that I pulled. I almost pulled one from game day basketball because it's the only thing I could find. But I think this is a matchup with a lot of Big 12 implications, and it might just be the right week to get out to Manhattan. So from there, we'll go to week 10. This would be the start of November as we head down the home stretch. So we got Louisville heading to Clemson. It's a big ACC week. Louisville goes out to Clemson. So two of your upper end ACC teams working it out amongst themselves. Where do these teams end up? Who's battling who? Going to be a fun one for everyone. North Carolina goes to Florida State. Now, we have not seen North Carolina on this list so far, which may mean they have an easy, sneaky schedule. They may just magically end up in the top 25. And if that's the case, they go to a tough Florida State team. And, what does that look like for Florida State at this point? Are they undefeated? Are they 1 loss, 2 loss? Let's see what these teams look like at this point. But I think it's a high-quality ACC matchup late in the season. You got, world's largest outdoor cocktail party, Florida, Georgia, whatever you want to call it. Always going to be a contender. Always going to be a high-caliber game for all of us watching. One of my favorite games of the year. It's the game that Kirby Smart puts his most effort into. He hates Florida with all of his blood and all of his guts. He hates Florida. So I know they're going to put their effort into it. Florida's going to put their effort into it. It's going to be a good one as always. Ohio State goes to Penn State. So I haven't seen Penn State on here in a little bit. So they should likely be cruising at this point. Ohio State has had a lot of home games that have been difficult. But between this and the Oregon game, where is Ohio State as a program? Where are they, conceptually, everything along those lines? And, the loser of this game may not have enough time left in the regular season to pad their resume for the playoffs. So this has conference and playoffs implications as well. And the number one game I have is actually going to be where I will be at is Oregon at Michigan. So again, where are both these teams? Michigan fortunately has had a lot of their tough games at home. I do think that's a benefit. Oregon has a tough matchup at home against Ohio State, and that goes across the country. Where are they as a team at this point? Are they undefeated? Are they 1 loss? There's a lot of stakes ahead for all of these teams. Now, we've already been to Michigan, so at this point, game day will end up at State College for potentially a top 10 matchup of Ohio State at Penn State, and a quality one at best, right? So going to be a fun one to watch. I don't think it's going to be under the lights. I think it's a noon kickoff. So, one of those two, Oregon and Michigan or Ohio State and Penn State, one of them's a noon kickoff. So I think this will be one of them, but we'll certainly see for sure. So we'll head down to week 11. So from here, another slate of high quality games. Let's just call this the SEC week. Georgia goes to Ole Miss again. Conference championship implications, playoff implications. Where are these teams at this point in the season? There's only a handful of games left. You lose this one, you're out of it. Alabama goes to LSU. I was at LSU and Alabama last year. I'm sure LSU thinks to themselves they want more, and they want to take in everything that's going on. So I'm sure when it's all said and done, this is going to be the type of matchup that carry some momentum through the rest of the season, knowing that both of these teams have a couple of tough games left on the schedule, and got to make the most of it against a rival, right? Especially at home if you're LSU, you've got to defend your turf. Florida goes to Texas this week, So again, this is right in the middle of Florida's terrible, horrible 5-game stretch to end the season, where they play 5 top 15 preseason games. You're eating if you're a Florida fan. Those are good games to watch. You just want to be on the winning side of them. Can they, in this case, go out to Austin at 11 a.m. and do what they need to do? Time's going to tell. And then you got Oklahoma at Missouri in an old school Big 12, new school SEC matchup with, again, high level stakes, high level energy. Where is Missouri at this point? Where is Oklahoma at this point? And, how do we, get this all together and get this all moving over the final weeks of the season? But the big one to me is Florida State at Notre Dame. That's where I have game day going. A lot of history between these two teams, a lot of classic matchups going back to the 90s and the 80s. And if Florida State is just cruising along and Notre Dame is cruising along, then this is a matchup with pretty heavy impact, pretty heavy implications. So I'm going to take a look at that game as the game of the week for Week 11. It's where game day will end up, but I think it's one that again will have big implications. Where if Notre Dame loses this one, it probably it may remove their chances of going to the playoffs. If Florida State loses this one, they're going to need to make they're going to need to win the ACC to make the playoffs. So a lot of up in the air type of mentality for everyone, but going to be a quality game nonetheless. So with that, I'll head to Week 12. And this 12 and 13 are where things start to, I'll say, get a little weird. This is that end of the season where some teams that you're kind of sleeping on early on get a chance, against a team that's also getting slept on, and maybe ends up being one of the better games. So I got Ohio State versus Northwestern as your fifth best, and that'll be in Chicago as a neutral. But I don't think Northwestern can be that bad this year. And when you look at the slate of how everything else shakes out, this is going to be one of those top tier games. You got Rutgers going to Maryland. Again, Maryland to me is a sleeper team in the conference. Rutgers I think is going to be more towards the middle of the pack, but it does give them a chance to showcase a team that they don't, two teams that they don't show as often on game day, right? So gives you a chance to go to the lesser side of things, or the less frequently viewed side of things. That go a long way, to promoting these programs. Nebraska goes to USC, another tough one on the road for Nebraska. How does Dylan Raiola, face the impact of going 2 time zones away, making a difference for himself? So, I think it's going to be one of the better late season matchups in the Big 12. And then outside of that, we're going to go back to the SEC. Tennessee at Georgia, a lot of hatred, a lot of rivalry there. There's especially over the last 20 years or so, where you've seen so many games go down to the wire. You've seen so many freak plays and blowouts. Like both these teams have that game on their calendar. And then you got LSU at Florida, which to me is the best game of the slate here. It's it's a rivalry game. Florida has not beaten LSU since 2018, and I'm sure they want to get that monkey off their back at home. Knowing that it cost them a spot in playoffs in 2020, knowing that you just don't want to lose to LSU. It's not fun, right? So you want to beat them. You want to rub it in your rival's face. There's not a lot of camaraderie between these two fan bases, so it should be the game of the week for me. Now, we've already been to Gainesville for game day, so game day will end up going to Tennessee at Georgia. So Athens will get the visit after probably being overlooked at one point, but they'll be heading to Athens for sure. So now that does take us to Week 13, second to last week of the regular season. So this is going to be more, again, your kind of oddball spots before rivalry week. So you got Iowa goes to Maryland. Again, a high on Maryland. Where's Iowa at this point? Time will tell. Who knows? But from where I'm looking, Iowa at Maryland is an underrated matchup with a slept-on Maryland team, elite defense in Iowa, and one of the top quality pieces of media to consume that week for sure. You got Ole Miss at Florida. The slate just keeps on coming for Florida, man. So where's Ole Miss at this season? Where's Florida at this season? Florida can be, again, 3 wins and a fire coach. Ole Miss could be undefeated. The you know, the way this all shakes out is just going to depend on the results of the season. But Ole Miss in the swamp, must see TV, and going to be an interesting one for everyone involved. Alabama goes to Oklahoma this week. This is, again, just sticking to the theme of the SEC. The next two are just where are these teams at at this point in the season? Who's playing spoiler? Who's legit? Who's in a playoff spot? Who's in a conference championship spot? Everything like that. That's going to be the case for Alabama and Oklahoma, and the same with Texas A&M at Auburn. So just 2 games, and with Ole Miss and Florida as well. It's 3 games of teams that are going to be in the mix of it. Going to be, this week is going to decide who ends up towards the top of the conference and who ends up towards the middle or the bottom of the conference. And those 3 are going to have high-level implications and high-level stakes. But to me, the top matchup is Texas Tech at Oklahoma State, with Gameday going to Stillwater. 2 of your top teams in the Big 12. Just trying to determine who goes to a conference championship game, who goes to a playoff game, everything like that. And this, at this point in the season, this might as well be a semifinal game or quarterfinal game. You get knocked out before you get knocked out, etc. And it's going to have big stakes for both those teams. I've never been to Stillwater, but I heard it's a good environment. I heard it's a good crowd, and definitely something that those 2 teams want to take advantage of in the second last week of the season. So now we get to rivalry week. I'm just going to skip to number 1, Michigan at Ohio State. Game day is going to Columbus. Not even close, right? It is one of, if not the best matchups in college football, one of, if not the best rivalry in college football. It puts, it's on par with everything else. It's, really the top 3 that we have sitting there are 3 of the top in all of college football historically. So Michigan at Ohio State, knowing the conference implications, the playoff implications, the recent history there where Michigan's won a few in a row in a national championship. Ohio State was beaten up on them before that, won a national championship. So from there, this is going to have big time stake, especially for Ryan Day. If he does not beat Michigan, you got to think to themselves, are they moving on? I don't know if that's a wise decision, but this game has real life implications, real life stakes. You got Oregon State at Boise State. Again, this is more of like the quote. I know, Oregon State is technically Pac-12 / independent, but this is probably the highest matchup of the group of 5 that we'll see in quite some time. So maybe game day goes to Boise as a celebration of the, of how everything's going out there. NC State at North Carolina, an underrated ACC matchup, a rivalry between 2 teams that do not like each other, that continue to take shots at each other, recruit hard against each other, everything along those lines. And at this point in the season, it's for bragging rights, it's for rivalry sakes, it's little brother and big brother, whatever you want to call them. But it's, when you think of that quad 4 rivalry of NC State, Duke, UNC, and Wake, any opportunity you can to beat someone in that group goes a long way with that program, especially at home. If NC State wins on the road, they'll have bragging rights for at least the next 2 years, right? Unless what? Well, at least the next year. Then you get Texas at Texas A&M. So in rivalry restored, they have not played since A&M left for the SEC. Texas is now in the SEC with them and is ready to restore the rivalry. This is an ugly, hate-fueled rivalry, right? Like, I do not want to be on the message board after this game ends and your team loses. Imagine Texas A&M loses at home, and then you go on TexAgs immediately after. Those people are they're going to burn their computers. Like, it's going to be the worst day in TexAgs history. But there's a lot of hatred here. There's a lot of back and forth. Both teams, consider them one of, if not their top rivals, the tea sippers and the farmers. Let's look forward to this one. And we've seen how expensive the tickets are for this game. So people are driving up the prices because the demand is there. And then other one I got is the Iron Bowl, obviously a big one. I think it's more exciting when it's at Auburn, but at Alabama is still a great place to play. Again, Auburn may be spoiling a few team seasons, and maybe this is when they can do it at, on the road. Alabama's gearing up for a playoff spot potentially, or a conference championship spot potentially at this point. So, going to be a quality matchup in that 3:30 on ABC slot, and going to be a fun day overall for everyone. But that concludes this. Because we're not doing conference championship games, and then Army Navy is on their own, I guess. But that concludes this episode of the New Year Six podcast. So we're all done with team previews. We're all done with game day previews. Where am I right? Where am I wrong? How do you think those teams are going to do? Where do you think the quality games of the week are going to be? Let me know in the comments. Like, subscribe, everything like that. So thanks for tuning in. We are officially in game week. I got one more video before the season starts. Just my postseason top 25 predictions. So who I think my top 25 teams will be in the final college football rankings, not the first one, because I think that's silly. No games have been played. Who I think they're going to be at the last one. And then I'll do individual game breakdowns for our two FBS games this week. So Georgia Tech, FSU, as well as SMU, Nevada. So that's all coming out this week. A lot of fun stuff to do. Really looking forward to it. Thank you for spending the summer with me, doing this journey with me. So like, comment, subscribe, and we're looking forward to seeing the start of the season soon.